Hi, this is Angie here at Abundant Acres Homestead, and we have been doing a overwintering chicken series. In this video in particular, I want to cover the coop. Now, if you don't already have a coop, there are some ideas in here that I think you could use. And if you do have a coop, there might be a few upgrades that you might want to do, especially the further up north you get, the colder it gets. So winterizing the coop is huge. And we don't do heat lights, so we are doing our best to make sure that we're doing what we can in here to keep our chickens nice and warm. And we're going to go over that. But it's starting to get cooler. The sun is going down, so I'm going to get to work, and we're just going to talk as I work. So there is the coop. Okay. First things first, this is a mess. So before winter even gets here, the cold weather's already started, but before winter actually really sets in and it starts getting really, really cold, I want to get this cleaned out because I don't want to have to clean that in the winter time. I mean, I don't want to have to clean it at all, but I don't have coop fairies that come clean, so that would be me. Okay, so cleaning the coop out is fairly basic. I'm just going to take a shovel. I'm going to be scooping all the poo out and putting it in a wheelbarrow, and then that is going to get taken over to the garden for composting. But yeah, that's basically it. I'm shoveling poo. So we're going to go ahead and put this on fast forward because shoveling poo really isn't that entertaining or exciting. So we're going to get past that. Okay, pardon the interruption, but I wanted to show this because we didn't have this in our first coop, and it's actually worked out really well, especially when it comes to cleaning. So just a quick time out, let me show you. These roosts, this is where the chickens come up and they roost at night. The previous one that we had, the roosts were stationary. I did do this upgrade. Can't really call it an upgrade because it's really simple and real easy, but the roosts are removable, which is nice because then I can just pull the whole roost out and scrape it and just put it right back in. But before I put it back in, I'm going to go ahead and clean up this side. I'm going to pull the roost off this side, and I'm going to go ahead and get this cleaned up. But yeah. Okay, so I got the worst of it done, and that is getting the poo out. So done, checked, marked off the list. Good job. Is it perfect? Is that okay? Yes. I do power wash it in the springtime because, you know, you do need to keep your coop clean. I don't worry about it in the wintertime because the way I like to see it is if there's anything left over, I'm calling it insulation, and it works for me. So that's what we're going with. It's insulation. Okay, so anyways, cleaned out, done. I do want to go over a few things in the coop that can really help you, especially if you're up north. Okay, as far as the exterior goes, chicken's house obviously have exterior walls. With ours, we actually have plywood, and you can see, I don't know if these are called bats or battens or whatever. They're just pieces of wood, and the reason we did that is because we didn't have a full sheet of plywood, so we used sections of plywood. So these here aren't just decorative pieces, they're actually covering the gaps of where the plywood didn't match. So this covers the gaps to keep the draft from going in. So yeah, that's the exterior. Okay, so this is one that I know a lot of people don't do, but the further up north you are, you should probably look into it. If you haven't already built your coop, I would definitely suggest it. If your coop is already built, but you can add this in, I really do think it is such an extra bonus or add-on or whatever. But I definitely would always do this. And that is to have an actual interior wall. This is not the exterior. So you can see here, this is the 2x4. The exterior wall is out here. We have the 2x4. There is a small gap here. We actually left that for a reason, and that is for air movement, because even in the wintertime, you want the chickens, you want this to be able to air out. And we left the gap up high, one, for predators, and two, mainly because heat rises. So now if it does get cold, we do have bats that we come in and we can lay here in between. But normally it doesn't really get that bad in here. But this is the interior wall, and you can see we have an interior wall all the way around. Okay, this here is another thing that we have. In the summertime, you can see there's actually a fence. It's, I don't know, half inch fence. I don't know really what it is, but it's close fencing to keep the birds and everything else out. But there is a piece of plywood that is actually, I call it the flap, the summer flap. In the summertime, that flap is down so that, you know, there's a lot of air movement in here. But in the wintertime, we already have it put up, and it is battened out there. So it's locked in out there, so we don't have to worry about it falling out. So yeah. Okay, so if you've seen our other video, as far as the pen goes, you know we use the deep mulch method. We pretty much do the same thing inside the coop. The only difference is outside the mulch, we're not so picky about. It's pretty much just whatever we chip up goes out here. Inside the coop though, I actually use pine shavings. Yeah, just regular pine shavings. And the reason I do that is for the insulation. It is a great insulator. I know a lot of people use hay. I don't like using hay because the hay in our area is usually sprayed or has chemicals and stuff on it. So I don't necessarily, it's not even necessarily, I don't use hay in our area. Now, Kenny does do some woodworking. So whenever he does woodworking, he also keeps all of those shavings. And I actually use the shavings out here, and some of the best shavings ever, if you can get your hands on it, is cedar shavings. Mainly because of the smell. There's nothing like walking out into a chicken coop, and if you keep your chicken coop clean, it really doesn't have much of a smell. So that's just kind of an extra little tip in there. Keep your chicken coop clean, and you're not going to have problems or issues with the smell. But if you can get cedar shavings, it actually smells good in there. So if you can get your hands on them, I highly recommend cedar shavings. But he hasn't done any furniture making in a while, so I don't have those. So I'm using the pine shavings because they just always work for me, and they're pretty cheap. So that's what I'm going to be using. So yeah, let me just get to that. Let me get that done, and then I will come back. Okay, so normally I would clear everything out. I would have cleaned out even the laying boxes, but I left it in purposely so that I could show you exactly what I do in the wintertime to kind of keep freshening everything up. So I left that in there just so I could show you. But first, let me get the deep mulch into the floor, and then I'll explain a little bit later. It'll make sense, trust me. Okay, so you can see new shavings are in, covered the whole floor. It's about, I don't know, I would say 2 to 4 inches, maybe 6 in some areas. Not really concerned with that because I'll explain it. Okay, here is the reason I actually left. Come on, wind, go away. Okay, so one of the reasons I left, I guess you'd call it the dirty litter in the nesting boxes, is because I wanted to show you exactly what I do throughout the winter. Throughout the winter, I don't clean the whole thing out because I actually want it to kind of build up because it gives it more insulation. So here's what I do instead. Same thing, same shred, but instead of cleaning the whole entire thing out, what I will do is come out here and I will just take this and simply dump it right on the floor. And what that does is it just adds onto it, so it gives it a thicker layer, and as the winter goes along, the chickens will continue to fluff this around a little bit. I will keep these boxes nice and clean. I actually fill them a little bit more in the winter time because I know I'm going to be spreading it out. Now normally I don't just dump it in one pile, I would spread it through the whole thing, but for video's sake, I just kind of wanted to show you guys what I do. So yeah, now I just fill the nesting boxes back up and we wait for a couple weeks, and I would come out and do it again, and I would do that all winter long. The size of the building can make a huge difference on keeping your chickens warm. So we have a smaller building, which works out great for us, but we also don't have a huge flock. And let's talk about the flock size. Actually, the bigger the flock size, the more it's probably going to help you in the building that you have, because if you have a smaller building and more chickens in there, obviously chickens have their own body heat, and that's actually pretty much what keeps this warm out here. We do have a dark roof, so the roof does absorb some of the sun as it's out, so that will radiate into the coop. And but the big thing is their own body heat. So if you only have like one chicken in a coop this size, it's going to be harder to heat the coop, and harder, not necessarily harder to heat it, because obviously you could bring heat out here. But if you did not or weren't able to have heat out in your coop, the smaller the coop, the better it would be. So if you only have like one chicken, obviously you would want the smallest coop you could get. Think of the coop size and your flock size, because the smaller the coop, the easier it is to heat. The bigger the flock, the more body heat there is. So you don't want, say 10, 12 chickens in a huge area or in a huge coop, because it's going to be harder to heat that coop, and then you are going to have to bring in some sort of additional heat source, or at least wall off part of it, so maybe it's a smaller area. Yeah, think about those kind of things when you are thinking, if you haven't already built your coop and you're just planning on chickens, think of the coop size, the flock size, and being able to heat it throughout the winter. Do you want to put in artificial heating, or are you going to rely on natural heating? So those are a lot of things to consider when you are thinking about getting a flock and starting chickens and taking care of them throughout the winter. So hopefully you've gotten some good information out of this. If you have, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you have any more questions, leave it in the comments. If you're a subscriber, awesome. If you're not, what are you waiting on? Hurry up, get to it right now. Would be a perfect time to hit that button.